Yeah, that's the big dog. Hello again, everybody. Joe Staszak along with my good friend Steve Kallas. Time for another episode of Kallas Remarks. And Steven, how you doing, my friend? Week 4. We're heading into week 4. And, of course, the big game on the docket. Tom Brady goes back to Foxboro to play Bill Belichick and that squad, who got their doors blown off at home last week by New Orleans, who got their doors blown off the week before when they had like 19 guys out with COVID and coaches. And then you look at Tampa Bay, first loss of the year last week in LA against Matt Stafford, who seems to be a very different quarterback with a much better team. Where do you see this game? I mean, there's a lot of emotions, and you know Tom Brady said, he even said this in an article recently. I don't say 90% of what I'm actually thinking, so we don't know what he's thinking and if he's got the big chip on his shoulder or whatever, because you know when he plays with the bigger the chip, you know, look out. But they do give up 30 points a game, do the Bucks, but they have a rookie quarterback in the Patriots. I mean, I love the Bucks. I love Brady in any game against a rookie quarterback. But your thoughts? 7-point spread in Foxboro. A lot of pomp and circumstance around the game.
I think it's an unfair fight. I know Gronk is questionable with the ribs, but
it looks like he might be out with the ribs.
But AB is coming back. And, you know, their tight ends, O.J. Howard and Brady, I mean, they're good even without Gronk, but they're better with Gronk's having a great year. And I think he's going to do everything he can to play because it's New England. The only wild card in the game to me, I don't think Mac Jones is ready for this defense. I know they're weak in the secondary. They signed Sherman. I don't know that he's even going to play. Or he might be in uniform, but I don't. You know, maybe from a physical body, if nobody's left perspective, which is kind of sad. Not that, you know, Sherman's a very bright guy. And you would think he kept himself in football shape, figuring he's going to get a phone call. And then he gets a phone call from Brady or a phone call from the Bucs, which is but here's the wild card for me. I love Tampa. I think they're going to crush them. I don't think Mac Jones is going to have a good game. I know he's playing okay, but he holds the ball too long. As do most rookie quarterbacks. I'm not taking anything away from him at all. And very importantly, James White is out for the season. He's the best third down back out of the backfield in the league for the last 3 or 4 years. And he have like 14 catches in one of those Super Bowls.
14 catches against the Falcons, and he scored the winner in overtime.
They won that game? I thought they were down 28-3 at the half.
I think they came back and won that game.
In any event, here's the wild card for me, and you can tell me what you think. Belichick, after 20 years of Brady, does he know something? They have a good defense. Their whole defense is good. Their linebackers are real good. The backfield, you know, without their superstar, Gilmore, is good to very good. It's not, you know, great. But can Bill Belichick do something scheme-wise to get, for example, everybody says, oh, pressure up the middle on Brady. If you get him on the edges, he steps up better than anyone. And all that's true. I don't know who's good with pressure up the middle on him, but that's irrelevant. Brady is not. So can Belichick find a way to make this into a scrum, to make this into a game? And I think the answer is no, because I just don't think the Patriots offense is going to be able to do enough to stay a long time on the field. You know, it's hard to run on Tampa Bay. It's much easier to throw on Tampa Bay. So that, I think, is the wild card. Bill Belichick, can he, with his 20 years, does he always known something about Brady that nobody picked up? Although the obvious, again, is pressure up the middle. You know, they're putting up all these stats on how terrible Brady is when he's pressured. And, you know, he's bad, but I don't know who's good.
Yeah, who's good?
I don't even know.
Right.
So, but I think to me, that's the wild card. But if he can do that, to me, he's going to have to do it the whole game. Because if Brady just stands alone in the second half, for example, I think they have the ability to easily put up 21 or even 28 in a half. He's going to be Mahomes-like of last year and the year before. We'll talk about this year. But he's going to be able to put up a ton of points because, again, he has so many weapons, even without Gronkowski, if Gronkowski can't play. Again, those other tight ends are really good, but they're deferring to Gronkowski because Gronkowski, it's early in the year and he's in shape. You know, my son Johnny used to say about Gronk, they should have never played him the first 8 games of the year.
Right.
The one they lost to the Giants when we were there, I told you the story. The first play of the game, he was looking at Gronk when Brady threw that safety. Remember, he threw it 50 yards down the middle of the first play of the game. And turned to me, I said, "That's a safety." He turned to me and he said, "Gronk can't run. We're in trouble."
Uh-oh.
And you know, will Gronk play 17 games? I don't know, but I got to think he wants to play this one. I think it's going to be a blowout for Tampa with that one caveat. Can Bill Belichick work some incredible magic, which of course, if anyone can, it's him.
Well, you know my thoughts. No one's really been able to stop Brady, except in very specific instances. He's had trouble with the Ravens at times in the playoffs, even in Foxboro.
Right.
Giants in the Super Bowl, yes. If you can get all the pressure up the middle and make him look, because that's what happened in the road, those Ravens games. Easier said than done. He's still Brady. I know they know each other very well, but and they'll be in my picks. I think you know where I'm going with that. Now you mentioned Patrick Mahomes. 1-2 this year. Like I had tickets to the Eagles. I gave them back to the person who sold them to me because I wanted her to make a lot of money off of them. I said I'd go to another game, and I figured they're 1-2. Like no one's buying them. Like who? It's like, all right. So they scored 33 against the Browns. They come back and win that miraculously. They were down big in that one. They lose by a point after up 11 to the Ravens in the fourth quarter. And then I did like I think the Chargers are a very good team, and they were getting 7. That's why I liked it. They won the game outright. I love Justin Herbert or Gilbert or Justin
Herbert. Herbert, you got it. Yeah.
Love Justin Herbert. Best. I mean, forget about Tua. I bombed on that pick, but Herbert, man, what a great quarterback. I like that team. But Kansas City has some problems. They have issues. They're giving up way too many points. You know, they scored, 33, 34. So they can still score points. They're probably averaging about 30 points a game, which is a lot of points. Playing the Eagles, who really kind of have come down to earth after that Falcons game. I mean, they got they had some breaks in Dallas. And you still looked up and you're like, oh my God, every time Dallas had right down the field, right down the field, right down the field. So Jalen Hurts looked like an amateur quarterback. How do you see the game in Philly going on Sunday? And what's up with the Chiefs?
Well, I mean, I think Mahomes has already thrown 3 interceptions and he threw 6 all last year, I want to say. And their offense is still their offense. They're going to put up a ton of points on the Eagles. The Eagles are already injured. You know, they got guys out for the season.
Again, so many guys hurt.
But you can run the ball on the Chiefs. The question is, will the Eagles try and run the ball? I mean, again, it's like from Andy Reid to Doug Peterson now to this guy. We're going to throw it anyway, even if we can run it. But you might want to run it. You know, Sanders is a very good NFL running back. So
really? Then why'd they run him twice last week?
No, that's the why. It's Andy Reid all over again. Come on, it's Doug Peterson all over again.
He makes Andy Reid look like 3 yards in a cloud of dust. That's terrible. 3 carries, and one was to Kansas Gaines or whatever his name is, the third string. What?
It's inexplicable. Although they have to know that Kansas City is bad. Kansas City's bad defensively. You know, if we're going to talk big picture Super Bowl, I don't even know how they're getting there now. And I picked, a rematch. So I think this is another blowout, though, not because of anything other than the following. This has been the first time, I think, tell me if I'm wrong, that Mahomes has really been criticized. And this has been the first time that he's played poorly, in my opinion, poorly for him in consecutive games. So I think he's going to be really focused and he wants to ram it down their throats. Like, Brady wants to ram it down the Patriots' throats. I don't care what anybody says. This is what these guys are thinking. And I think a guy like Mahomes in this game against the Eagles doesn't want to put up just 30. He wants to go 40. And if he can go 50, he's going 50. And maybe he'll do the Aaron Rodgers. Well, we got the trolls off our backs for a week. Remember Aaron Rodgers said that? He never spelled relax. If he did, I would have picked him the last 2 weeks, Joe, but he never did that. But I guess he's got everybody relaxing now. But I think that's the mindset now. Mahomes doesn't want to score points. He wants to score bushels of points. He wants to throw for 5 touchdowns, and they still do have the offense to do it. So my view is, even if somehow the Eagles see the light and can run the ball on the Chiefs, this is going to be field goals against touchdowns. This is going to be success with the run versus Mahomes with the pass. And again, if Jalen Hurts goes down the let's throw it road, I'm not saying it's even his fault, but they're just not good enough. The Eagles I'm talking about now, to me, they're just not good enough to really go toe-to-toe with Mahomes. The only question is, and I think it'll be answered positively, can Mahomes play like the old Mahomes? And I think the answer is yes, but we also thought that last week and the week before.
This is the Eagles, though. Remember, it's the Eagles. So
yeah, well, I didn't. Out of respect for the Eagles, I didn't pick against them last week. So I'm not going to make that mistake 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, it is hard. We talked about this. I used to not. I'm just, hey, if I think I can make some money, I don't care. But it does, it really takes away a little bit of the rooting, but then you can look at it, well, you can win either way, but we couldn't get in, but you did lean to the Cowboys, and that was the right pick, because the Eagles looked, from week one, where they looked buttoned up and they looked like, well, this guy at least kind of has a feel for what he's doing. Now, he had 9 months to prepare for the Falcons. Not as much time to prepare for the following 2 games, Frisco, and they probably should have won that game, but, some crazy play calling, and then they were just undermanned and out-quarterbacked and didn't run the ball against Dallas. I said 6-11 at the beginning of the season. Do you think they're on pace for that, or is he even that too generous for the Eagles from what you've seen so far?
No, I would stay with you on that, only because they're playing the Giants twice, and we'll have to see where our Washington football team goes, because right now Washington's a little better than the Giants. They might be a little better than the Eagles, but they're no match right now for the Cowboys, in my opinion. The Cowboys have risen to the top. Frankly, after the first game and after 3, after what they did to the Eagles, they seem to be the class of the NFC East, to me anyway. And I did not think that, as you know. I did not think that before the season.
All right, well, let's move on. We got some other things cooking this week. It's been a fun. I really enjoyed the first 3 weeks. It's been interesting. The Bengals. Jags are getting better. Not that we need to really discuss it. They're 0-4. They had a lead in that game. Joe Burrow was a rematch of a title game a few years ago, LSU and Clemson, or one of those big games. And Joe Burrow comes out with a big win on a field goal late. They beat Jacksonville, so Jacksonville's still 0-4. Urban Meyer looked actually very hurt by that loss, but they're getting better, so they might not be the doormat that we think every week in terms of playing them. But as I look down the schedule, I think the Cardinals and Rams are an interesting game, because I'm not sure how good the Rams are, but they look pretty good against Tampa. They looked like they didn't wilt. They kept responding every time Tampa did something well. Sean McVay's 39-0 and leading at the half. I think I'm sending you a text when they were leading at the half, and then they won that game by 10, and it wasn't even that close. They got some separation. Cardinals 3-0. Where are the Cardinals? I mean, they did come back and they covered against Jacksonville after that 109-yard field goal return. That's the kind of stuff that happens when I bet against a team. They do stuff like that. But the Cardinals ended up covering, and they're 3-0. And Kyler Murray, someone on Twitter, and I don't pay much attention to Twitter, but say, oh, he's just a little bit of a rich man's Jalen Hurts. I don't think that at all. I think Kyler Murray, despite his size, is a pretty damn good quarterback, quick as a hiccup, can throw the ball. DeAndre Hopkins is a little banged up, but how good are the Cardinals? Is this like a decent Cardinals team? J.J. Watt now and everybody?
I think Kyler Murray is very, very good. I think he's a poor man's Lamar Jackson. That's what I think.
There you go. Okay, that's good. That's good.
But they're very good. But I think the Rams, look, to me, the big question mark on Matthew Stafford, never won a playoff game. So to me, this was his first big test against the Bucs last week, and he passed with flying colors.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like he's shots away from the big moment. I think he was just in.
Right. When we get to the playoffs, we're going to say, is he good enough to win a playoff game? Well, this was almost a playoff game. And this might be like a deciding factor.
Yeah.
So I think the answer will be yes, he can win a playoff game. Can he win an NFC championship game? And that's when it really gets bad. And then from what we read, you have no idea what it's like to be in the Super Bowl if you haven't been in the Super Bowl, even if you're a big time player.
Oh, right,
of course. Don't know.
Different experience, absolutely.
He still has mountains to climb, but my goodness, he's passed every test, and he must be waking up with protection and the defense and going,
wow,
I'm not in Kansas anymore.
Imagine what I could have been.
Right, because he's been there. This is like his 11th year or something.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
So he got into a bad situation and stayed there, but now he's out. And I can't imagine what it's like to show up to work every day, but he must be the happiest guy in the NFL. So I like the Rams, but I think Arizona is very, very good. So we'll see what happens, but that's a tough division.
I don't feel bad for them, but these very highly touted quarterbacks that are like slotted to go 1 through 6 in the draft, their environment is everything. And a lot of them end up Cincinnati, Jacksonville, the Cardinals when they were terrible. It's actually, it's pretty impressive turning a program around and now being a decent program with what they had to work with. And Kyler Murray, like you said, is 3-0. We'll see what happens with Trevor Lawrence. Joe Burrow looks like the real deal. So, but you mentioned like Matt Stafford. I think he was the last big quarterback. Maybe Sam Bradford to sign like a big contract before they leveled that out and said, you can only have rookie contracts. But in Matt, I always thought he was a real good quarterback in a real bad spot. And to watch him now in LA, it's 4 touchdowns the other day, no picks. I mean, I think that's a team that was a great trade, I think, for Jared Goff. And not sure why Detroit did that. I forget who else they picked up, but I think LA got the much better of the deal there. Now, here's an interesting, and you've dealt with this team at times this year in terms of the betting numbers. Denver, which is weird because they got Teddy Bridgewater, who I always liked. And then he got that major injury, and then he was the backup in with the Rams. I always liked him in Louisville. Doesn't turn the ball over. And the mess of situation they had at quarterback there last year. They're 3-0. I don't know how good they are, but it doesn't turn the ball over. And they're playing the Ravens this weekend, who, they lost 2 of their major running backs and had to pull one out against the Chiefs and had some interesting things happen against the Raiders. But who do you like in that game?
I think I like the Ravens, but this is the game that's going to tell us how good Denver is. They've beaten nobody, right? Who they beat? The Jets, the Giants, and the Jaguars? They're 3 of the worst. They might be the 3 worst.
That is true.
Well, I guess I'd throw the Texans in there, but they're 3 of the worst teams in the NFL. But Denver's good. They have a very good defense. Von Miller is healthy. I've always loved Teddy Bridgewater. I thought he would be an elite quarterback if he didn't get hurt. And now he's getting the chance to show it. And people who say he's a game manager, I think, don't know what they're talking about.
No, he's much better than that.
He is finally getting some respect with the experts on TV. But I'll say it again. To me, he's always been a good NFL quarterback to very good. And now he's showing you he's very good. He can make throws. He's a smart guy, always was. And I think they're safe with him. But this is the Ravens. I think it's a real test for Denver. Again, we'll know a lot more about them when we talk next week than this week. And we'll also know a lot more about the Ravens. I still don't believe the Raiders game, but for them to come back against the Chiefs and win, to me, is as much about the Chiefs as it is about the Ravens. But it's the first time Lamar Jackson beat, Mahomes and the Chiefs. And so that's a big win for the Ravens. And he's still, of all the wild cards in the NFL, Mahomes is not the biggest wild card. Lamar Jackson is, to me, because he can still do so much with his legs. He's a video game when he runs, and he's throwing it a little better now. He's no Mahomes in terms of throwing it. And I'm not saying he's better than Mahomes. He's not. But in terms of being a wild card, what can this guy do? This guy can turn a broken play into a 70-yard touchdown run or a 50-yard touchdown pass. That jump pass last week where he jumped up, the guy was wide open and ran for a 50-yard touchdown. It was like they had 4 guys around him. He just jumped up in the air like Superman and threw the ball 20 yards downfield for a 50-yard touchdown.
It's great stuff.
That's what he can do, and he can extend the play even better than Mahomes. He's not better than Mahomes, in my opinion. But don't forget the weapons that Mahomes has and has had. And I don't think Lamar Jackson has quite had that group of weapons. And he especially lost in the backfield this year. So we'll see what happens. I do like the Ravens, but I really like Teddy Bridgewater as a quarterback. But again, Denver's beaten nobody. And I'll just give you a quick horse racing analogy. So a horse is climbing up the ladder and he beats bad. He beats, they're okay. He beats, they're average. And then they throw him in with the really good horses. That doesn't mean he can't beat them.
Right.
That means you don't know how good he
You
is.
just don't know how good he is.
So with Denver, that doesn't mean they can't beat them. We just don't know how good they are because they beat a horrific team, a terrible team, and a bad team. And so now we're going to find out how they're doing against a good team, because if they can beat the Ravens, then they're a real good team, in my opinion.
Agreed. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about this gentleman, because I will forever tie him to the Eagles and their quarterback situation, because they had an opportunity at number 10, I think. They went from 12 back to 10 after going from 6 to 12, and they took Devontae Smith. Right after that, the Giants moved back with Chicago like 9 spots, and they went out to get Justin Fields, who I thought, again, I was not sold on Jalen Hurts. I do think Justin Fields will be a better quarterback than him going forward. So I just think it's something to watch going forward. Kind of like we were going to watch the receiver from Minnesota, from LSU.
Jefferson.
Thank you. Yeah, we don't need to watch him anymore. I think we know that was a disaster. But I've never seen a quarterback have 0.0 yards per passing attempt throughout an entire game. Now, I'm going to say he was under duress, 9 sacks in the game, but 6 of 20, 68 yards. I didn't see much of the game. Was it that much of a beatdown from the Cleveland perspective? Would Andy Dalton have done a lot better? Did you see a lot of it? I did not see a lot of it except for some highlights.
Yeah, Andy Dalton would have done better, because Andy Dalton is a seasoned NFL quarterback who at a minimum is going to get the ball out of his hands. And to think that Justin Fields couldn't really run around, couldn't avoid some of these sacks. I'll say it again, when these athletic quarterbacks who can run it, he's not Lamar Jackson, but when they can run it, they get into the NFL and suddenly they're not as great athletes as they used to be. Why? Because they're with a bunch of great athletes. And I think this is one example of that. And I was watching NFL Live, and, I think they asked like Jeff Saturday, who do you blame for that? And he was like, 1/3 Justin Fields, 1/3 the offensive line, 1/3 the scheme. They didn't give him max protect. And I kind of agree with that in the sense that a well-seasoned NFL quarterback cannot be sacked 9 times. I think it's impossible, because he's just going to get rid of the ball, get rid of the ball, get rid of the ball. And if you're a fan, you might be pissed at him for getting rid of the ball, but then you see a guy take 9 sacks. And you're like, oh, that's what happens if you don't get rid of the ball. And I'll say it again, he's not as athletic to get away from these things. But it was a jailbreak like every play of the game. Again, I had 2-3 guys in the backfield against Fields. So I agree. I think you have to be careful with who you let these guys play against their first game. And then they play the first game, the Bears. They played somebody with a real good defense. And I remember talking to you, and I was like, they shouldn't let Fields play against it. This is a killer defense. But unfortunately for him, he wound up playing against a real good defense. And I don't.
They played the Rams.
Yeah, so you want to play a guy, you want to start a guy in his first game against Aaron Donald? You're not. No. I think with these young quarterbacks, all of them, now that they're just throwing Lawrence in the deep water, we knew this was going to be terrible. We knew Urban Meyer wasn't quite ready for this. He was making those complaints before the season started.
Sure.
Like, you're not in Kansas, you're not in college. Come on. And same with the guy with the Jets. I mean, he was real good with the 49ers, Salah. He was really good. And I don't know if Wilson's going to be a good quarterback. He's under duress from the get-go. And a bunch of his weapons, insofar as their weapons, have been injured. And their defense lost, their top 2 or 3 guys. Now Marcus May, their best safety, is out. So it's kind of unfair. But if you throw these guys in the deep water, whereas you look at a guy like Herbert, who was kind of lower in the totem pole, and he's the best of all of them the last 2 years, by far. That's your guy, who was the number 6 pick.
Yeah, I love him.
But I think I'm going back to Andy Dalton, because I don't want this guy to be shell-shocked. This was not a good experience. I would have thought about now, is Nick Foles injured? I heard he had some kind of problem or something. I would have started Nick Foles last week because you don't want to throw these rookie quarterbacks to the wolves, especially the athletic ones, because they think they can get out of the way and they think it's college. But it's not college.
No.
And Justin Fields found out the hard way. Is it his fault? I saw him yelling at somebody on the sidelines during that game last week. Was he frustrated? I don't know. But you got to pick your spots, I think, with these rookie quarterbacks, unless you're willing to be 3-13, which maybe the Jags will be. But if the Bears want to do, if the Bears want to do anything this year, I don't think Justin Fields is the answer. And again, Andy Dalton was playing well.
Yeah.
The other day, Justin Fields was full in practice. We're doing this Saturday morning. Yesterday, he was full in practice, and Andy Dalton was limited. And they said Nick Foles, I thought they said he had some kind of minor injury. They didn't know, I don't know if he's even if he could be on the field. I don't know if they're dressing 3 quarterbacks every week. But I would not play Justin Fields. And don't tell me, we had to get the bad taste out of his mouth, because if he plays again, he might have a similar kind of game. If he has a couple of those games, Joe, you better be the most confident guy in the history of the world to overcome last week, because I don't think you could paint the worst game for a quarterback like in the history of first game starting.
Well, I'm looking at Matt Nagy had said earlier this week that all 3 Bears quarterbacks are being considered for the starting job this Sunday. That's when it's nice to have 3 choices, but we'll see.
Well, in the Joe Staszak world, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have any. If you have 3, do you have less than 0? I don't know.
If you're Chicago, you may have less than 0. All right, let's do some picks. You've been very good, both college and pro. I've been okay. How'd you do last week? What do you got this week?
Not good last week. You were the man last week. I was 1-2 last week, 5-4 for the year. I live for the playoffs, but that's far away. So you are
Mr. December or January, I should say.
I'm picking, and you'll laugh at me for this because this goes against the Joe Staszak rule. I'm picking 3 road favorites once again, but I'm looking for bad teams to pick against, which I think is not bad early in the season until they start to get good. And I understand that Tennessee doesn't have Julio Jones. I understand that Tennessee doesn't have A.J. Brown. Neither of them have been dominant, of course. Why? Because it's the Derrick Henry show. So Tennessee has gone from like 8 down to 7 down to 6 over the Jets in New York. I still don't see how the Jets can score. I know Tennessee has a bad defense, and I know the Jets are good against the run. Knowing all of that, I don't know if that makes them good against Derrick Henry. And they're going to load up and pound because of the injuries on the wideouts. They're going to pound the run. And even if the Jets are good enough to stop them for a half, you know how Henry is in the 3rd quarter and the 4th quarter. I think he's going to rush for over 100 yards and at least 2 touchdowns. And frankly, if you told me they were going to win 14-7, I'd believe it. What I wouldn't believe is that the Jets scored a touchdown. So it might be like 14-6. Maybe the Jets get 2 field goals. I just don't see how the Jets are getting better. Oh, and by the way, Marcus May, who has been their best DB, for a couple of years now, he's a safety. He's out for a month. And they've just been decimated before the season, on the defense. They've lost 3 or 4 of their best players for the season. And I just don't think it's going to get any better. I don't think Salah and Wilson, they're almost like robots when they're talking. Yeah, the point is to get better. And yeah, we're doing better. And yeah. No. It's not like A for effort in the NFL. Again, it's not college.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they're in trouble. So I like Tennessee -6. As I said before, I like the Chiefs a lot, -7. Not because Philly's terrible. They're bad. They're not terrible. But I think this is a proving game. This is the first time to me that Mahomes has really been criticized. He has not been good in back-to-back games. He's been a little sloppy, which we all know Mahomes takes chances, but most of them he completes. And then we go, how do they do that? But I think he wants to put up 40 or even 50. And I think he might be able to do that against the Eagles. And if it goes bad in Philly, the fans will be booing quickly because it doesn't look like Jalen Hurts is the answer. Not blaming him.
Right.
But, you said it last year after 3 or 4 games. Don't think he's a franchise quarterback, and I don't think he's a franchise quarterback. And even going back to drafting Smith, the Heisman winner, and I know we were on this all year last year, but if you drafted Justin Jefferson last year, you wouldn't have drafted Smith this year. No, my point is you would have got a really top player where fill in the blank where you need it, cornerback or wherever you need it, you would have got a really top player. And I'm not saying Smith isn't going to be real good. I mean, he's the Heisman winner. Don't think he's better than Jamar Chase. We've seen him click with his old quarterback, Joe Burrow, down in Cincy now. And I'm not saying they should have, I don't know when Chase was taken. I shouldn't say if he was taken before, but so much would have been corrected for the Eagles if they had just done what you and I and 1,000 other people thought was the obvious and draft Justin Jefferson. You wouldn't need the Heisman winner. You could have strengthened up some other spot. So I also like, this is -7 Kansas City, even though they're on the road. And finally, much as I think Belichick is the greatest coach ever and can work up schemes, there's so much talent on the Tampa Bay side. I'm going Tampa Bay -7 over the Patriots in New England. And I think because, at least in my view, and my disappointment of Mac Jones, to me, he holds the ball too long, takes too many sacks, he takes stupid sacks, and he's not yet quite I can go to my second and third read like a Brady eventually became. Brady wasn't great when he started, but he did enough to win, and he was really good. And Mac Jones hasn't protected the ball interception-wise as well. So I think this is going to be a blowout. I think all these games are going to be blowouts. But I think the biggest one is going to be the Chiefs, because for the first time, I think Mahomes has some doubters, and he's going to be saying to himself, man, I'm going to shut these. He's going to Aaron Rodgers it. I'm going to shut these people up. And I think he has the weapons and the team and the power to do it, even though you can score, you can run it on the Chiefs. I just don't think there's enough there in Philly. And we don't even know if he's going to run it, even though he's got a great running back. It's Andy Reid disease, as you said.
Incredible. Yeah, incredible.
But you were better than me last week. How'd you do? And who do you like this week?
2-1 last week. We talked about this, and similar to you, and the philosophy more than anything. The one game it's a principle game, but it just might not be all that smart in terms of a business play. I do like Tampa. I like Brady. I don't care. I will always take the quarterback over the coach. Brady knows all the tricks, and there's nothing you can do that will flummox him, except if you really get a lot of pressure up the middle. I don't think Mac Jones can put up 30 points against the Bucs like everyone else has been doing. I like Brady in that game. It's a chip game. When he has a chip on his shoulder, take Brady. Just take Brady. Don't worry about it. I do like Tennessee because, like you say every week, how the Jets going to score? I don't know. I love Derrick Henry. He gets better as the game goes on. Are the Jets getting better? Yeah. Are they decent against the Jets? Until I see them do enough to start covering games, I'm going against them. So I like Tennessee. And I love the Chiefs. I do love the Chiefs because I think the two things. One, the Chiefs have to get their ship righted. And they haven't had problems scoring points. They've had problems keeping people out of the end zone, which is something the Eagles haven't done a lot of anyway, because, again, I'm not big on their quarterback. I don't know how their running backs are this year because they don't use them. And they're very decimated. Brandon Brooks, Brandon Graham, they are just so banged up from week 1 where they were healthy to week 3. It's just the same old, same old. I might add a principle. I'm not a big, Davis Mills, the quarterback of the Texans. 17 points is a lot in an NFL game, but I did watch Buffalo decimate Washington. This game could get out of control. So I'll probably lay off of it. It's just a game to keep an eye on. That's a lot of points in an NFL game, but it's in Buffalo and they seem to have gotten their mojo back. So I'm going to stick with 3 games. Tampa -7, Tennessee -6. And the Chiefs -7. Let's talk a little baseball before we get out of here.
Well, I just want to say one thing since I'm writing these down this year. In all the years we've done this is the first time we both picked the same 3 games.
Is that right? Okay.
So next week, we'll either never talk to each other again or we'll be stars.
I love it. Oh, that's fantastic. All right. Well, let's talk a little baseball. Believe it or not, the Phillies are only 1 game out of the 3rd wild card spot behind Cincinnati. So anyway, they're done. I'm just kidding. I love the race in the NL West. San Francisco hasn't clinched yet. That's just a franchise. If you look back, I mean, my goodness, they won 3 in 5 years with Bruce Bochy and the gang and Baumgartner and that whole crew. They're on, what are they? They won over 100 games. You were talking about a team from the turn of the century that I know you have some things to say, which were very interesting, but it's just an impressive franchise each year, year in, year out. The Dodgers, they'll get in, but Kershaw may not pitch in the postseason. Not that we think that's too much of a hit because he's injured and he doesn't pitch all that well in the postseason. But your thoughts on that race and how the Giants are, and historically, what have they done? They've been pretty impressive.
It's a miracle. And, they ran Gabe Kapler out of Philly. He's getting the last laugh for sure.
Yeah, right.
But I have read a couple of articles on the Giants, and apparently virtually everybody on their team is having a career year, which never happens. If you look at the back of their baseball cards and what they've done this year, they've all done better, but you have to give them credit. I mean, they're not loaded with superstars. I do think, though, the deciding factor in the playoffs still might be the Dodgers picking up Max Scherzer. I mean, he's been unbelievable, and he's a big-time pitcher, and he's good in the postseason. And I think you're right, Clayton Kershaw. Again, you know how I feel about him. He's Sandy Koufax in the regular season, and he's pretty terrible in the playoffs. He's still, I don't care. Everybody tries to make excuses for him. He's maybe an average pitcher in the playoffs, and that's a maybe. And he came out of the game, as you said, inning and 2/3. He was crying after in the press conference. I don't know if I saw that.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty clear to him he's not pitching at least the rest of this year.
That's a shame.
And he's got left forearm stiffness, so it's not. I guess it's not an elbow Tommy John issue. But he pretty much said, "I'm not going to play the rest of this year." But again, it's been Walker Buehler's team in the postseason for the last few years to me, and now. You have him, Urias, he's really good. I'm not the biggest Kenley Jansen fan, but he's been through the wars. And frankly, Scherzer is Scherzer. I think he's the wild card. And I will say this, we'll go into it in more detail next week. But, at the beginning of the year, I picked the White Sox over the Dodgers in the World Series. Even though the White Sox are somewhat of a long shot and the Dodgers are probably going to be a wild card team, just to explain, the Giants are 2 up with 2 games left. So if the Giants win one of those 2 games, which they will, they're in first. If the Dodgers lose one of their 2 games, which they might, so the Dodgers are going to be a wild card team. You know what I feel about wild cards, and we'll talk about the AL.
Right.
We'll talk about the AL in a minute, but this is I don't want to call it phoniness anymore.
Yeah.
This is the myth where they have to do something to keep people interested. The Yankees, well, I'll wait till we get to there. I'll just stay on the Giants. But the Giants have 106 wins this year. Incredible. And it tied the most wins ever by a Giants team in the history of the Giants, going back to the New York Giants. And they said it was the 1904 Giants that won 106 games. So I looked them up. I must tell you, I don't know much about the 1904 Giants, but you'll know some of the guys. They were 106 and 47. And then they also had 5 ties. And I think that counted in the stats for the stats. Ties don't count. But that says to me they played 158 games. So this Giant team has already played 160. And that means a lot to me because they're going to play 4 more games than the 1904 Giants. But then I went further, and you may know this, Joe. 1904 was the year of the second World Series.
Yes.
And the Giants did not win the pennant in 1903, the first World Series, but the Boston Americans, soon to be the Boston Red Sox, did. And they won the first World Series. And then in 1904, the Giants refused to play the Boston Americans because John McGraw and the owner of the Giants hated Van Johnson, who was the founder of the American League. You know the reason the National League is called the Senior Circuit. They started in the 1880s or something. And the American League is the Junior Circuit because they started in 1903, which, 118 years later is comical.
Right.
But I had to look up the 1904 Giants, as you probably thought I would.
Now, of course you would.
They had nobody who was a hitter. I mean, maybe they had a guy in the Hall of Fame I never heard of, but no big name. But they were known for their pitching. And their 2 pitchers in 1904 one of whom you definitely heard of. The other one, maybe I had heard of him, but Christy Mathewson was on the 1903 Giants, one of the greatest pitchers of all time.
Yeah.
And he combined with Iron Man Joe McGinnity to win 68 games between them. It's still the highest. It's the highest ever from 1900 forward. I don't know if you had those guys who won. Didn't someone win like 50 games in the year? Maybe before 1900. But after 1900 and after, these two guys, and Mathewson is one of the greatest pitchers of all time. You know, they always said that Christy Mathewson and Walter Johnson were better than Cy Young. But Cy Young, who had pitched in the 1890s as well, you know, through so many games, he won the most ever. He also lost the most ever. I'm not knocking Cy Young. I'm just saying that was the view. The reason the Cy Young Award is called the Cy Young Award is not because Cy Young was better than those guys. It was because he had won more than 200 games in both leagues. And when the Cy Young Award started, it was only given out to one pitcher in both leagues. That's why the Cy Young Award is named the Cy Young Award. People wanted it to be named the Walter Johnson Award. But he mainly pitched in the American League, and Christy Mathewson mainly pitched in the National League. It's fascinating stuff. I just want to read you their records.
Yeah.
And I probably shouldn't read it to you in 2021 because people either won't believe it or they'll be laughing because it's so ridiculous compared to today's pitchers. Christy Mathewson started 46 games, pitched in 48. He threw 367.2 innings, and his record was 33-12 with a 2.03 ERA. Joe Ironman McGinty was even better. Ironman McGinty, by the way, in August of 1903, the reason he got his name Ironman is he pitched both ends of a doubleheader 3 times in August of 1903 and won all 6 games. And in his career, he pitched both ends of a doubleheader 5 times, and he swept 4 of them. The other one he split. In 1904, Ironman Joe McGinnity, 51 games, started 47, threw 408 innings. 408 innings pitched. I think that's more than any 2 pitchers now who lead the league in innings pitched. 408 innings, and he was 35-8 with a 1.61 ERA.
Wow.
I'm just saying, Joe.
Right.
Not to. Well, a little bit to, you know, I still don't understand. I understand analytics, don't see him through the 3rd inning, but nobody pitches 9 innings anymore. If you start the 7th, you're a hero.
Let alone a doubleheader.
The reason to have 7-inning games, I think, is because you could revert to complete games.
Right.
But that's for another time. Quickly on the American League East.
Yeah.
Quickly on the American League wild card, which is essentially the American League East, by the way. The Yankees have the first wild card. They actually lost last night to Toronto, which really closed things up. The Red Sox have the second wild card, and the Mariners and the Blue Jays are 1 game behind. And believe it or not, there's a way there can be a 4-way tie. There's a way. And it's not so crazy as other things have to happen. Here's all that has to happen. I'll give you the remaining games for each team and what has to happen for there to be a 4-way tie. The Yankees have the Rays, who obviously aren't laying down. They beat them last night, 2 games. The Yankees have to lose both for there to be a 4-way tie. The Red Sox have Washington, not very good. They have to split. That's a possibility because the reason the Red Sox are in the jam they're in is they lost 2 out of 3 to the Orioles. Remember we talked about how the Red Sox had the easiest schedule the rest of the way? They lost 2 out of 3 to the Orioles. So they have to split with Washington. Then the Mariners have 2 with the Angels. They have to win both. And the Blue Jays have 2 with the Orioles, who they should beat both, but you don't know. If that happens, and that's not crazy, if that happens, there would be a 4-way tie. There'd be 2 playoff games on Monday, and the 2 winners would be the wild card. And I assume they do some kind of percentage, some kind of tiebreaker. They wouldn't have another game because the first game is Tuesday. So that's the lunacy of it all. I just want to say one thing about the Yankees, and I understand the Yankees are the Yankees. Aaron Judge and Stanton have hit 37 home runs combined in the last 2 months. Wow. That's pretty incredible. Yeah. And Stanton went on a streak last week that was just, you know, he hit a different ball over a different sign over Fenway Park, over the Green Monster, out of the stadium on back-to-back games to either win or ensure a win. I mean, he's just been unconscious. And here's a guy who was missing pitches by a foot earlier in the year. But they're playing to be the first or second wild card. So whatever they do to get in, they can lose 1 game. And again, this is my knock on the wild card. on the one hand, look at the excitement, Joe. 4 teams within one. Oh, it's so exciting. And I'm like, really?
Right.
Now, at least it's not like the NL East was, where everybody was kind of around 500. Give credit to the Atlanta Braves won it. Give credit to them. They lost Acuna, their best player, and they won it. But it's like the NFL. Where we're 7-7. If we can win our last 3 games, we're a playoff team. But that's where we are. But my point on the Yankees is, okay, they played out of their minds. They went on that 13-game winning streak. Then they recently had a 7-game winning streak. They just had a 6-game winning streak snapped. But they're playing to be the first or second wild card, and they can still not be the first or second wild card. So kudos to, Judge and Stanton, who are having great seasons, or at least the finish of great seasons. But I don't know if we had pennants, or even divisions, because Tampa Bay is so far ahead of those 3 teams. Those 3 teams are in the playoff hunt for 2 wild cards: the Red Sox, the Jays, and the Yankees. So Tampa Bay once again under the radar, because they've already clinched. But they're starting their starters as openers. Last night the starter pitched 3 innings, so they're giving them a little work. They're lining up their pitching for the playoffs because they're the Rays, and they're going to have those days off.
Sure.
So I'll never get over it again. Baseball was the last team I used to defend baseball. Baseball is the best sport. You got to win something to be in. You got to, but not anymore. And the Angels won the World Series early on as a wild card. So it's like the 8th seed winning the NHL championship, which, as also happened.
Kings, of course, my Kings. Hey, great stuff, buddy. Enjoy the games today. Just want to let you know, we've been keeping an eye on Georgia. They scored 21 points in the first 11 minutes over Arkansas. They're up 21-0 at the end of the first quarter. Keep an eye on them this year. We'll revisit that next Saturday.
One more thing for me. I just wanted to give a quick 2 dates in baseball history.
Yeah. Oh, that's right.
Yesterday, October 1, yesterday in 1961, Roger Maris hit his 61st homer. That's 60 years ago. And they had played 162 games for the first time, so that helped them. Ford Frick, who has actually been the commissioner of baseball, who had actually been a ghostwriter for Babe Ruth, said, there's no way. If you don't do it at 154, there's no way. And for a while, they had 2 record books. It wasn't an asterisk, my recollection. My father collected those, and I remember him in the 70s looking at them. There used to be 161 games, Roger Maris, 154 Babe Ruth. I don't think there was an asterisk, but whatever. I still think they should have separate record books, just like in football now. You could have a 12-game, 14-game, 16-game, and now 17-game record book. I'll say it again. Joe Namath threw for 4,007 yards in the 14-game season. What would he be in a 16 or 17-game season?
Yeah, right.
I don't want to get off the thing. But Maris, he hit the 61st at Yankee Stadium. Only 21,000 people were there. But it's Phil Rizzuto. Holy cow! You can see he did it. You can find it on YouTube. And October 3rd, 1951, the shot heard around the world. Bobby Thompson off of Ralph Branca 70 years ago tomorrow. And again, I wasn't around then, but my father told me. We didn't know what he was a Yankee fan. We didn't know what the big deal was. The Yankees had won in 49 and 50. They were going to beat whoever won in 51, which they beat the Giants. And in 52 and 53, they won again. So I understand. Still, many people consider it the greatest home run of all time. Did Bobby Thompson know the pitch was coming? That's come out in the last 5 years, right?
Oh, God.
So that the bloom is off that rose a little bit as well, but still dates to remember in the history of baseball.
I still go Mazeroski. That was to win a championship, but that's just me. It's like
That's a good one.
Christian Leitner. He won a championship. Okay. That's questionable, but I still go with the home run to win the bigger platform. But I mean, I remember Dad talks about Bobby Thompson's home run all the time. It was incredible, apparently. Of course, I did one of those things with Shannon. I said shot heard around the world. She's like, "Oh, that happened up in Massachusetts, right, with the Minutemen?" I'm like,
"Well, she's right. I didn't see that one. Otherwise, I would have."
Oh, it's on my Facebook. Yeah,
I'll have to look. She's right.
Like the Heidi game, shot heard around the world, Miracle in Minneapolis. I gave her some of those. Yeah, she didn't do very well, but you can check it out.
Right. She should get a point. Okay, I will check it out because she gets a point for that one. The question is, did we know that it was the Minutemen?
You're right. All right. I'll give her half credit on that one. Hey, Jordy, great stuff as usual. Check out Steve's stuff on his Facebook forum page. Speaking of sports with Steve Kallas, you can also check out his videos on westchestercountypost.com on YouTube. You can find this podcast on YouTube and also on Steve's Facebook page. You can follow me on Twitter at Staszak 4799. We'll be back next week. Enjoy the games, everyone. And we'll be back next Friday. I'm actually away, but I'll be back home. We'll hopefully shoot next Friday morning and have another one of these on Facebook and YouTube for your enjoyment. Steve, great job as usual, buddy. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you, man.
Always a pleasure, Joe.
You too. All right. Thanks, buddy. Thanks, everybody. And enjoy yourselves. God bless. We'll talk to you soon.